Hi, my name's Phoebe Madrell, and I work with ultra high net worth clients and their staff, as well as business owners. I help transform the way people work, communicate, and delegate. Today, I'm sharing a webinar on how to work successfully with a virtual assistant. This includes tips and tricks on how to successfully hand over tasks and how to use technology to be more effective in your business. By implementing these tools that I'm going to share today, you can grow your business revenue and reduce burnout. Make sure you subscribe to see more. Today we're going to cover how to work with a virtual assistant. Obviously, it's a really, really broad topic that has so many different strands to it, and this is just really a small snapshot of some of the things that we can go into regarding how to work with a virtual assistant. It's a very broad topic, and obviously it can be a little bit industry specific as well, depending on what you're working and how you're working. But I will do my best to cover as much as possible today. So first of all, talk a little bit about who I am. I'm sure many of you as well have found me today as well, thanks to Stacey. Stacey and I do a lot of work together, but I have a long work history, over 17 years. I've worked in all sorts of different industries and jobs. I spent 9 years managing private estates and yachts for what we call ultra high net worth clients. So generally have a lot of stuff, I like to say. Prior to those 9 years, I also spent 8 years working in corporate, including recruitment, as well as, again, many other industries that kind of led to this experience that I have. And when I was working in the ultra high net worth sector, my roles were always direct report to principals. Now, what that means is that I work straight, just me and them, between usually the number one person that's being taken care of. So the most pivotal person, and I will be a direct report or a direct working alongside them collaboratively as well. And again, like I said, ultra high net worth means that they generally had millions of pounds worth of assets, money, and stuff to look after. So generally very successful people, and often people who are successful in business generally. Again, there's a bit of a theme. Some people work in this industry and they might have generational wealth, but generally I've always worked with business owners in one way or another. And again, during that time working in that industry, I also was responsible for overseeing staff in lots of different roles. What leads me to today, I've been working now on my own business for the last 2 years. And again, I have a long history actually of working virtually with people. I've kind of coordinated virtual teams all over the world since the early 2000s. Since I was a teenager, I've mobilized teams of people to do stuff all over the place. So remote working and virtual working for me are not a new concept at all. They're not something that arrived to me during COVID as a necessity. It's something that I've been doing and living and breathing for many years. And it's really interesting to see how things are changing and seeing this virtual assistant market really open up, and that more and more people are engaging virtual assistants, which I think is fabulous and just a really worthwhile thing, which is why I'm here today, because I think we all need to think more about doing this. Okay, so if you do have any questions throughout today, please note them down, and then we'll have a great unmute at the end and we can all have a good chat about anything. So just write anything down if you're not sure of anything. There's no such thing as a silly question. If you don't understand terminology or anything like that, just please, make a note and we can go through that at the end. Okay, so how do I know if I'm ready for a virtual assistant? I think, as I say, it sort of feels like if you're not a CEO or if you're not kind of perceivably uber successful, there's a sense of, I don't need a virtual assistant. Why would I need a virtual assistant? Why can't I just do it myself? And I think that's one of the biggest things that seems to happen is there's kind of a sense of imposter syndrome and discomfort that comes with onboarding a virtual assistant and kind of actually engaging anybody in your life. For me, this is something that I see right across the board. So one of the most common ways that I see this show up for a lot of people in day-to-day life can be hiring domestic help, like a cleaner or a housekeeper. That can be something that I really see people battle with. They really struggle to come to terms with the idea of needing to outsource something because there's a strong sense that they should be able to do this for themselves. It's uncomfortable, can lead to feelings of imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I wanted to share as well today is that rest assured that this is a feeling that exists for everybody. And even when you're somebody who has amassed a huge empire, and you might have thousands of employees, as some of the people I've worked for have, they still find it uncomfortable to outsource. It doesn't come to us naturally in many ways. There's a lot of kind of social talk around it as well, and it feels like, I think it comes with a lot of judgment that we might need to outsource something. I don't know how many of you, if you've ever mentioned to somebody who's maybe not in the industry that you're in, or they don't understand remote working, or they don't understand what it's like to be a business owner, they might have said to you, like, why do you need a VA, or why do you need a cleaner? Like, there can be a lot of judgment with that. So one of the things that can be a barrier to getting the help you need is that it's good to acknowledge that it's kind of denial almost about needing help in the first place. That's a really common thing. So I want to acknowledge that and just let you know, if you have any of those feelings, it's totally normal. Everybody experiences them to a higher or lesser degree, and the only way to get rid of them is sort of practicing navigating that. So what does ready look like? As we know, most of us here, I think, are business owners, and our business owners' time when we're working on a business is finite. This is not an infinite resource of, we only have so many hours in the week, and we have to make a decision between our personal lives and our businesses. How much do we spend on our business? Because we cannot spend every waking minute on it, even though I know it's tempting. Again, being business owner is very, very tempting. It's also often an endless to-do list. It's ever growing. There's always things to do. There's always the would be nice. I really wish I could work on that. And it can be really overwhelming to deal with that feeling. And especially if you have a strong sense of being entrepreneurial and you're really, driven to grow your business, it can feel like it's a lot to take on. But one of the most recognizable traits that I see, again, with all the successful people that I've worked with, has been their ability to delegate. So being able to delegate is really important, and recognizing when to delegate is crucial. Now, part of being able to delegate successfully is also understanding what our strengths and weaknesses are, and just how do we figure out, what we should keep and what we should work on, and then what we should give away, what we should outsource. If you can get that right, and you can understand what to give away and what to keep and how you're going to be most effective in your business, it can be a real game changer for growing your business, working more effectively, and just generally being happier because you have the balance right. Again, one of the common feelings I think that happens with this is that we, again, have this assumption in ourselves that we should be able to do it all. Like it's inherent that that's just the way it is, and why can't we do everything? But again, part of what I want to achieve today with this webinar is that to give you permission to say that you don't have to. That's not the baseline. There isn't an expectation that we should be able to do all of these things all of the time, all at once. It's normal to need to have help, and it's normal to need to delegate. And again, as I'll go through, hopefully it'll help us if we get to the point of feeling able to do that. So I wanted to go through the maths of outsourcing. And again, I think one of the barriers to it as well is feeling like we can't afford a virtual assistant. And I think this is a really important topic to start with for lots of reasons. But again, it's this mindset of feeling like it's a luxury and feeling like, gosh, this is not for me. This is expensive. This is something that I can't pay for. So I just want to take you for a moment and reframe the context of what hiring a virtual assistant might look like versus some of the kind of more negative connotations that we might have of, like, say, I don't deserve it, it's too expensive, I can't afford it, and reframe that a little bit more and just separate that out to what it might actually feel like to have a virtual assistant working alongside you. So one of the things might be, what if you felt less stressed and you were allowing your brain to work more effectively on more money-making aspects of your business? So they're easing the burden, making it easier for you to just really have uninterrupted time to look at what makes the money in your business and really focus on that and create real focus and calm to make that happen. Another thing a virtual assistant can do is, what if your virtual assistant helped you reach new audiences, which increased your revenue? So the virtual assistant could be helping you get more money and reach more people by the support that they give you. Again, wouldn't that be great? Like, that's surely something that we all would love. So another way that I also want to bring in is, what if offloading stressful personal admin? It could be something like organizing birthday gifts or travel logistics or whatever really, again, you have a blockade on and feels really difficult and stressful for you. What if you were able to give that away? And what if that enabled you to work more effectively in your business? So again, with this, I want us to think about the fact that when we engage a virtual assistant, it might not just be in our business life. This actually could also be on our personal life too. In my mind, there shouldn't necessarily be a barrier between saying that we have a virtual assistant just to work on the business things. We should have a virtual assistant to help us with whatever we need to make us more effective. And if that means the help needs to be coming from the personal side, so be it. It's, again, whatever helps us show up in our businesses and be more present and be more able to work on that in the most effective way. And again, thinking deeply about what keeps us awake at night, what troubles us, and what do we find hard. Again, another one is a virtual assistant can help create consistency and accountability. So what would that look like if you had somebody alongside you who was helping keep you accountable, checking in with you, making sure that tasks are tracking okay? Would that make it easier for you to show up in your business? Would that, again, ease some of the blockades you might have with getting things started and seeing how you go? Now, if you think having additional help might make you feel any of those things, then, again, this webinar really is the right place to kind of dig deeper on that and figuring out what to give away. Just some, again, basic facts and figures. Most virtual assistant rates now are starting at around £30 per hour, depending on their experience. It kind of goes up from there. If you want somebody, I don't know, maybe like website assistance or certain graphics design, could be more than that. Or perhaps it's particularly nuanced or niche, the support that you need, it could be more than that, going up to say 40, 50, 60 pounds. But I think 30 really is the baseline that you should budget to engage somebody to help you, even for some basic admin tasks. Now, the other really important thing I think to remember is that having a virtual assistant is a business expense, so it's tax deductible. So again, like I talked about in the last slide, if your virtual assistant, again, adds more value than you pay them, then really you can almost think of them as free, and it all goes into the expense pot. So big questions. How do I decide what to outsource? You finally, maybe you've got to the point of warming up to thinking, right, I'm ready to start delegating. The big question of where do I begin, which again can feel really, really overwhelming. So one of the simple rules that I think is good to follow with outsourcing tasks, and again, it's not hard and fast, you have to do things in the way that you feel comfortable and you understand your needs as well best, in terms of, again, what holds value to you and what might be a blockade. But a really, really easy place to start is, if you're outsourcing a task, if you can outsource it for less than the value of your time, then it's worth doing. So for example, if you have a virtual assistant that charges you £30 an hour, but you can earn more than £30 an hour by doing tasks that are income generating, it's more cost effective to outsource. It's a no-brainer. And that's just a really simple way to sit down and do kind of an audit of where you're spending your time. And you can ask yourself, well, if I had an extra 3 hours, would I be able to make, the £90 back if I gave that away? Can I make more in those 3 hours? How does that stack up? That's just a very simple kind of maths way of looking at it. But more than that as well is that it's about your well-being, as I mentioned before, and again, as we know, we can't really put a price on that. So it's not just always a monetary factor. It's also about, how does having a virtual assistant make you feel? And again, if it makes you feel better and it adds value to your life in that way, then again, it's probably very well worth doing for you and engaging somebody. Especially when we can stress ourselves out, tie ourselves in knots, and we get stuck on tasks that we don't enjoy. This, again, like I said, I love this word at the moment, but we blockade ourselves. We create a barrier between achieving the tasks that we want to achieve because we get caught on one little thing in our business. And this can really restrict our creativity. And again, it doesn't matter to me really what industry you're in. I think all business owners are creative on one way or another. We just have to be. You have to be creative to start a business in the first place. It doesn't matter on your industry. There has to be a level of creativity there. And again, for creativity to flow, we need to make sure that we can be unrestricted and that we have space and time, and that our brains are allowed to have that creativity instead of getting really caught and bogged down in some of the kind of smaller and more administrative tasks in our businesses sometimes. So that's really, really important. Most importantly is that, you're able to make space for you to create the business that you want, that's enjoyable, that it's sustainable, and it's made up of what you like to do. And this is another way I think that's really good to frame things, because instead of, again, thinking of the mindset, I have to do it all, it's just me, isn't this about, when you start a business, trying to make something that you really love and enjoy, and like I said, is sustainable, so you're not going to get burnt out, or you're not going to get fatigued by certain things that you don't really like? If that's the case, then again, being evaluative about what you do and don't like within your business, and making sure that it is being really made up of all the good stuff for you, and that you're able to give away the stuff that's doesn't really speak to you so much, so that you can really leverage your experience and where you work best. It's a real game changer, and it will really accelerate the way that your business grows. So how to start working with a virtual assistant. So again, come to terms with what it might look like, ready to drop the money. Where do I start now? Looking for somebody. How's this going to work? What might that relationship look like? So I think it's really worth remembering that when you work with a virtual assistant, it's a collaborative relationship. It's very different to being an employee and having an employer. And again, you're not the boss of the virtual assistant in that way. It's a completely different type of relationship. And personally, I think it's really very, very 2024 to work like this, because I think there's a lot of people, again, who are becoming disengaged with being employees. It's a big reason why we start our own businesses. And I think a lot of what's happening in the virtual assistant market is a reflection of that, because people are starting to go, do you know what? I want to work how I want to work. So we have to bear that in mind when we do work with virtual assistants. It's a collaboration. It's not I'm going to tell you what to do, and one person is an authoritarian and the other person is just there to, be work under instruction. It's quite different. So always, I think it's worth keeping that in mind. It's collaborative. On that note, you're both business owners. You both have terms and conditions to abide by that you'll put in place, and you both have expectations to be met. Another thing is that, you both have the free will to walk away from each other at any point, so that, again, if the relationship's not working, either one of you may decide to exit that relationship. So it's worth thinking about how you get started to make sure that you set things up in the best way possible to make sure you have the most successful relationship possible as well. And like with any type of working relationship, the kind of fit that you have and the person that you collaborate with is really crucial. It's really important to feel like you work well together, and that you have some kind of commonality, or again, you have a similar energy, whatever it is that's important to you. The fit is really important. And for me, I think one of the most vital pieces of information that I give away in this webinar is that slow and steady wins the race. It's really, really tempting when we onboard a virtual assistant. We spent a lot of time mentally preparing ourselves to give a task away. But it's also tempting that when we do get somebody on board, we go, okay, here you go, please take everything. Oh my gosh, can't believe I've got somebody on board. Here's 100 tasks. And what's important to remember is that might not be the best way to start. Starting with a whole bunch of things is not ideal, in my opinion. I think it's a really good idea to start slowly, and then if things work well, you keep building their workload. And this is for a number of different reasons, but most of all, it's because it takes time to get to know each other. And the slower and more paced you can have that working relationship grow rather than it being a whole lot of stuff at once. I think the better kind of autonomy you give the virtual assistant, they learn about you in a more nuanced way, and it's just a lot more focused. It can be hard if you give somebody, say, 20 tasks for them to understand how to prioritize, for example, and they've never worked with you before. We don't often come with a manual, do we, as business owners? We have to try to impart what we can then to that virtual assistant to help them understand us. So just starting with a couple of tasks and a few smaller things, I think could be a really good way to just learn about each other and learn about each other's working methods. And again, it's lower risk and it feels a bit more steady in my mind. Now, it's an important one, setting expectations. So before you do any work together, so again, before you start assigning 5, 20, whatever tasks that you're going to do, before you do anything, you have to set the initial expectations. Now, there are some fundamentals that I've put on here of things that, again, I would not proceed without if you're going to onboard somebody and get them involved in your life. You need to agree how long tasks will take to turn around, vital. And in particular, how you're going to manage urgent tasks. Now, again, this is a bit of a folly that we might fall into where I don't ever have urgent tasks. I'm never urgent. You know what? Things pop up, and sometimes we might have urgent tasks. There might be something that you need to ask your virtual assistant to do same day, or maybe within 48 hours. If they've given you, say, a 7-day turnaround for tasks, and then you suddenly need something in 48 hours, it's a mismatch in expectations. This is, again, a point of potential conflict. So the easiest way to navigate that and to make sure that everybody's on the same page is to have a procedure and a policy in place to say, if we have an urgent task, this is what we do, and this is how we deal with it. And again, this is somewhere that if you're engaging somebody, you can break the contract. If you start asking for loads of urgent tasks, okay, well, it's a collaboration. Again, that's not quite what you agreed, is it? So it's kind of worth bearing that in mind. Again, there's always a balance with this relationship. It's really a collaboration. It's two people coming together to work on this. Now, really important, which I'll get to on the next slide, but you need to agree how you're going to communicate and manage those tasks. You also need to agree an initial amount of work hours and how will you be notified if your virtual assistant hits that target. So they might say, we're going to do 5 hours a month. How are they going to let you know if they've used up those 5 hours? Because again, it's a learning curve, understanding how long things take, how much detail there needs to be done in a task, and how long that particular virtual assistant may take will be different to another virtual assistant. So just understanding kind of timelines of things and how long time, how much time it takes for stuff to be completed is really important to learn in the early stages of the relationship. So again, running to, like I say, a deluge of tasks, again, you see why it's problematic. It's better to just keep it really refined. You also need to agree how invoicing will work. Whether you do that in advance or after hours are completed. It's pretty common that a lot of virtual assistants will ask for an upfront payment. Again, I know business owners sometimes can feel a bit apprehensive about this, but it's quite normal to expect that. A really important thing as well that's fundamental is you should always be issued with a contract from the virtual assistant. Again, how that virtual assistant's contract can be a sign of what they like to work with and how detail orientated they are as well. So it's always worth looking over. And again, depending on what your business is, if you have, say, intellectual property to protect or certain data handling procedures that you might be concerned about, you may also need to have your own document that the virtual assistant signs so that you're protected. Again, collaborative relationship, it's a two-way street. It may be that you want to put your document in place as well as signing theirs, or you may read theirs and go, great, that's enough. I'm really happy with what they've got in there. And that's enough for you to feel protected and safe in what you're doing. But it is worth thinking about. Again, it's quite niche specific, depending on what the nature of your business is. And lastly, there's things like ICO registration, which is the Information Commissioner's Office. Again, if you're doing data handling, anybody working in the virtual assistant space needs to have that registration. Again, indemnity insurance, there's no rules and regs really on whether you have to have indemnity in the virtual assistant world. But again, I'd always recommend it. It's worth knowing that that person, should something go wrong, has insurance in place to protect against that. And that could be something like, I don't know, an unforeseen cyber attack, or some, again, issues with data or file storage. And often these sort of arising circumstances are way beyond the control of the virtual assistant. They're often related to perhaps the tech products that we're using, but it is definitely worth having and knowing that that insurance is in place on their side as well. And again, just to mention there on contracts and just making sure that that's all signed and sorted. Okay, communication is, again, foundational to your successful relationship with this virtual assistant. So it's 2024 and we have so many options of how we communicate with each other. It's overwhelming. I don't know about anybody else, but I tend to have at least 2 to 3 threads of conversation going with different friends across different platforms because of the fact that we have Instagram and WhatsApp and messages and email. And it's honestly mad, isn't it? You know, and again, managing communication can feel like an entire job just itself. So when we're setting expectations and we're starting this working relationship, being clear about how and where we communicate is number one for me, absolutely vital. So this is also, again, somewhere where it's a collaboration. There's kind of joint responsibility in this. So if you're engaging a virtual assistant, you need to, first of all, make sure that the communication method works for you. You need to choose something that is going to mean that it will benefit you and it's a way that you're comfortable with. And again, this kind of goes into the fit of what the VA is like, that they can cater to that. It's also worth remembering that the more communication channels you have, the less effective a virtual assistant can work. And it's much more likely that their time is going to be wasted. That's because if they're having to check loads of different platforms, it loses a lot more time than them just checking one place, reading it. And it's the same if you're then searching for something later. If you have to search 3 different places, it's way more difficult than just choosing a singular place and everything being all in one spot. So if you can find a virtual assistant who already knows and likes working with whatever your preferred methods are, that's a really good sign that they're probably going to be a great collaborator to work with. So I have some suggested methods. There are absolutely, like I say, dozens of ways to manage tasks and communications. There's all sorts of different combinations. And ultimately, as I said, you really have to sit down and take a step back and think about what works best for you and find the right fit. One of the examples I would like to give is, say, WhatsApp. I really love using WhatsApp. I'm obsessed with it. I run so many things through WhatsApp. But one of the things I also do is that I will mute the conversation sometime if I don't want to be disturbed out of hours. And again, this can be a really flexible way for me to be able to make sure that I don't get some of my personal time eaten into if somebody might be contacting me out of hours about work stuff. And again, this goes back to certain kind of rules and expectations you might set around how your virtual assistant communicates with you. They might work all sorts of hours and they might say, hey, look, sometimes I might message you in the evening. And again, that's something you can go, well, I can accommodate that. Like, I'll just put that chat on mute if I don't want to see it. You know, so it's really thinking about kind of how these little nuances might work and what is it that is best for you. Do you prefer to have no WhatsApp and just sit down at your desk and read through your emails methodically, and you would prefer that your virtual assistant emails you per topic and then you can go through one by one and reply, and then you have an email thread? Right, if that works, brilliant. But just think about how your working practices are, what time you work, where you work, and what's accessible for you and what's quick, effective, and painless and has no discomfort involved for you. That's vital. You know, there's something to be said as well that, you know, your preferences when you're choosing your virtual assistant do come first. If you have a friend, say, recommending a great virtual assistant, but maybe they don't work with your methods, like they don't want to do email, they say, oh no, I manage all of my clients strictly through Trello. And you go, well, I've never used Trello before, but apparently this virtual assistant's really good and they come with great reviews. I have to say, it doesn't matter how great somebody's meant to be. If they are not meeting your needs, I wouldn't think about working with them straight off the bat. They need to be open to your communication methods and your style of working. Otherwise, you're making your life harder and not easier. So lead with your needs. It's really important. Now, my two core methods that I would choose from personally would probably be Asana and WhatsApp. But there's lots of different ways and combinations that you can do this. So again, first of all, you need a method of kind of back and forth communication, I like to call it. So like it's a WhatsApp, it's an email, it's a message where you've got a thread ongoing. And then you need a method of task management. So obviously there's a whole bunch of different task management tools out there. Mentioned just a couple here. There's, Trello, Monday, Asana, but you know what? You can also just do it through Google Sheets. I'm a big fan sometimes of just keeping things lo-fi. If you're starting out and again, you feel overwhelmed by the idea of using a project management system, there is absolutely nothing wrong with just using a good old Google Sheet, set to the old collaborative button between you and your virtual assistant, and off you go. If you're just two people working together, why not? That can be a really great way to go. That means nobody has to really learn anything, because most virtual assistants will ideally have some knowledge of Google Sheets, and it might be something that you're familiar with too, so it's very easy to set up and just get going, versus again, project management software can feel a little bit overcomplicated. And again, you just need to pick one of each of those in my mind, and that's where you start, and ideally that's what you stick to. Again, tempting though it might be to send multiple streams of communication through multiple platforms, if you can pick one channel to go back and forth on, this really will maximize your efficiency and save time with your virtual assistant. Now, what I wanted to talk about next in terms of kind of managing those tasks and how do you kind of get the most again out of working with a virtual assistant, and what works really well when you're handing off all these things and threads of your business and having somebody just work on it. Now, I really love employing this technique, which is called passive management, something I've done a lot with all of the teams I've worked for. Again, I actually do this kind of task management on a really large scale for different teams working in private households for ultra high net worth clients, where you might have a team of 10 people in one country and 5 people in another country, and they're all managing different properties and they're all doing different things, and you have heads of department, and it gets very, very complicated. But the methodology, whether you're running, again, a big empire of people or whether actually you're running one person, is the same, in that I think passive management as a technique is really successful, and it builds a lot of trust, creates a very frictionless way of working. So I really wanted to talk about that today. You might not have heard about it before, but really it's fundamentally about using something like Asana or, like I say, Google Sheets, and you implement that to allow just very passive oversight. So once you've dumped all of your tasks onto Asana or Google Sheets, and you provide all the information that your virtual assistant needs, if you then say to them, right, great, could you update this then and keep me updated with on the sheet and what's happening and make sure the notes are there, this is a really good way that you can just check in. You can just drop by Asana or drop by onto the Google Sheets, and you can just see what's going on with that. And it's a really good way to build trust and to give a virtual assistant autonomy, because you're basically going, right, here's the keys, I'm giving you the information you need, off you go. And don't get me wrong, this doesn't work with all virtual assistants. Not all virtual assistants have the expertise to be able to self-manage like this, but good ones should be able to. And it's an important part, again, of being a virtual assistant, is that you again have the initiative, once you've got the task in front of you, to run with it and make it happen and get things done. And it really, again, I think makes all parties feel good. You don't have to be breathing down the neck of somebody and sending text messages again going, oh, has this been done, what's happened, where's this gone? If you account for everything somewhere in a central place like a Google Sheet or Asana, you put everything into one spot, and then you both can see it, and then you can both update it, and you can see what's happening with that person that you're engaging and how they're tracking with that task. It just really alleviates a lot of the kind of older working methods that we saw, where management is viewed as the idea of that we have to check in with people and we have to, chase every little thing and micromanage them. The more passive we can be and the more we give them tools to be managed passively, I think the more successful it is. And again, it allows for more of a technique where you might have kind of meetings with that virtual assistant to go through certain things periodically. But in general, on the week to week, you should be able to just use whatever platform you've chosen, again, Asana, Google Sheets, and just run it from that. So yeah, it can really, I think, again, really change the way people can work together, and again, makes life a lot easier. Now, one of the most integral things with any work that we do in the world, really, isn't it, is building trust. And building trust, again, is a hard thing to do. It takes time. Back to my point about just build slowly. It's not something that happens overnight, and don't be afraid of that. It does take time, and it takes time to be able to hand over some of our more sensitive tasks or things that we feel very precious about in our lives and our businesses. So again, don't expect to feel ready to hand everything over overnight. It definitely takes time. Like I said on the last slide, putting everything centrally and brain dumping everything that's going on in your brain is a fantastic place to start. Get it all down and put it into one place, so at least it feels accounted for. Now, from there, tools like Asana are great because they do allow for relevant deadlines to be set. They have great notifications, which will prompt the person that it's been set and assigned to. And that can be really helpful for virtual assistants managing their workload. That's really one of the ways that Asana has kind of the edge over Google Sheets. And I think that's really useful, again, where within this passive management setting, you're just basically able to go, right, this is really urgent. I need that by the end of the week. This can be 2 months' time. And again, it just builds in real autonomy to really understand what the virtual assistant's kind of work is going to look like and how they might structure it, because you're able to intuitively show them, right, this is how urgent or vital this thing is, or this isn't. The other thing I would totally recommend doing is creating a Google Drive with any relevant files that you need to hand over to the virtual assistant. So again, you're just kind of really creating a database of information that they can tap into. So again, you can link this back into Asana if you want to, or other project management tools. You can link back and forth, which makes it really effective for them to just be able to dive in and see exactly kind of the task that they need to get the information for, or the documents, or whatever it is. And it's also important, often, virtual assistants generate paperwork as well. Whatever they're working on, there might be something to save. So again, giving them a space that they can save it, and they can create a legacy of knowledge with that. Something else I love is making sure that we record keep is important as well, so that again, you can access it in the future, they can access it in the future. Having that centralized hub, again, is really important. So you've got kind of files, communications, and tasks all living somewhere that it makes sense. And once we create all this, the idea is that then we can sit back and start enjoying it, enjoying some of the relief that you'll feel from having your mental load of burden eased, because you haven't now got these tasks just living rent free in your head that are keeping you awake at night thinking, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. They all live somewhere, and they are getting done without you. You've just set somebody on their way and off they go. Like, what a feeling. They're getting resolved, and they're happening without any of your time being put to them. You just invest a little bit to begin with, and then, all being well, the task flows, it gets done, and it magically disappears. Like, it's a great sense of relief. And again, this trust of, building to the point where you can trust a virtual assistant to get on with the things, and not, have to, again, have this micromanagement and have this needing to, look over everything that they do. And again, trusting them that if they need something, they will come to you and ask for it. And again, these relationships don't happen overnight, but over time, the impact that can make to your business by having somebody alongside you like that can be huge. So really don't underestimate that initial investment to get the relationship up and running, to make it happen, and to then have this incredible result at the end of it, because you're able to really transform the way your business works. Now, of course, is worth mentioning, this is trial and error a little bit. Not all journeys to finding a virtual assistant may be smooth or idyllic. But I can tell you that after onboarding dozens of VAs and working with people remotely and all the staff, changes and recruitment that I've done over the years, some of the fundamental things that will really change your trajectory on finding the right person and hopefully get you a really good match with your virtual assistant are the three key takeaways that we talked about. So starting slowly and building up. It's setting those expectations really clearly. And again, using project management tools, whatever that looks like, just again, accounting for what you need somewhere is vital. I mean, I can't imagine trying to work with a virtual assistant where I'm just sending tasks on an email into the abyss and hoping that they get done. Because again, having that accountability and just being able to see it live somewhere, it not only changes the way that we work, but it also does change the way the virtual assistant works, because they know that it lives somewhere too, and they know that it's there to be completed. And I always think, none of us are infallible. Like, we all get emails and they go, oh no, I forgot, I was meant to send so and so to somebody. Whereas we can really mitigate that by making sure everything lives somewhere and that it has a home and it goes, okay, right, that lives on the project management software. And again, if we put these in place, hopefully we can find somebody who will really change your life and enable you to find a whole new way of living and operating, whether it's in your, like I say, your business or your personal life. This can have an impact across both. And as I said, no matter what, it takes time. You will find the groove of collaborating. And sometimes it can be as much as learning about yourself as a business owner when you're trying to give this away, as much as it is about learning about the virtual assistant that you're working with, to be honest. It's a two-way street. It's a collaboration. Now, I wanted to just wrap up as well about kind of some of the needs you might have if you have any experience with being neurodivergent, or if you are diagnosed, undiagnosed, or honestly, even if you just struggle with task management. It doesn't matter who you are, but if you're struggling and you're finding things difficult within your business and you have these blockades where, like I say, you have tasks that are holding you up because you're not able to move forward with a certain number of tasks because this singular task is really, really a struggle for you, having somebody like a virtual assistant can honestly, again, have such a massive impact. It can be an accountability buddy to help keep you on track. It can help you navigate demand avoidance by being there and around to kind of prompt and handhold and just find tricks and different working ways to navigate these things. And most of all, we can give you support in untold ways, whether it's kind of starting a task that you might find hard to begin, or again, taking away the one thing that you're like, I just can't do this and I can't cope with this and this is just really, really hard. So if you can identify those things and understand yourself to go, okay, this is something that is just holding me up, and find a way to delegate that, it can really open up the way that you work and transform again your life. And I know in particular in the neurodivergent space, it's so difficult, and there's so much again narrative with ourselves around how that feels. Again, it goes back to what I was saying originally. A lot of it can be feeling like, well, why do I have to need why do I need to have this help? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just do it myself? I always have a strong sense that I should just be able to do everything. And we have to really sometimes take a step back and go, do you know what? We really don't have to do everything. It's okay. And again, sometimes having a virtual assistant is a great way to just remind us that that's okay. Like, learn to accept ourselves a bit more and accept that we all need different help. And as I said, there's no successful business that I know in the land that doesn't exist because people delegated something. People only get to be really successful business owners by learning the art of this delegation and learning how to give stuff away to somebody, because that leverage just can give us an untold power and really transform the way that we work. Now, If you'd like to work with me at all, I do lots of different things, very, very varied, as you can tell from what I talked about earlier. But I do help create structure within businesses, which saves time and stress. I can help you understand what to outsource and how to onboard a VA if you're not sure about that. Again, how does it apply in particular to your niche and how might that work? Or if you're just trying to figure out what a system you need and how would that work and what would it look like and how does it work if I need to have multiple virtual assistants, because sometimes you might have different virtual assistants with different strengths and you might need to give different people different things, and that's really awesome to do because again you're able to grow the amount of support that you get and grow your business hopefully in the process of that. Again, classic examples might be you have somebody doing inbox management, you have another person doing maybe social media, and before you know it you might be working with multiple virtual assistants. And again, it can be really important to create a good system and foundation to make this work really smoothly and effectively so that the workflows work and that they're not again difficult or time wasting. I really kind of help streamline those processes to make sure that everything just really runs smoothly and that everybody understands how to communicate and set those things in place, and again help you evaluate if you don't feel sure about where to begin in this process because you don't know really what you should give away. I can help you work on that and understand what that might look like for you. So one of the easiest ways to do that again is a consulting call. We can talk for 90 minutes on whatever topic you'd like or cover a couple of different topics for 149. So that's a great easy way to get started. Now, make sure you stay connected with me. I know a lot of you are connected with me already, but if you're not already on my Instagram or LinkedIn, then this is where you can find me. It's basically just my full name.